Good evening, everyone, and I would like to call to order our Lucan Biddulph Council meeting for Tuesday, June 21st. There are no additions to our agenda this evening. Is there any disclosure of a pecuniary interest? Okay, seeing none. So today marks not only the first day of summer, but it is also, and perhaps more importantly, National Indigenous Peoples Day. And this is a day for all Canadians to recognize and celebrate the unique heritage, diverse cultures, and outstanding contributions of First Nations, Inuit, and Métis peoples. The Canadian Constitution recognizes these three groups as Aboriginal peoples, also known as Indigenous peoples. And although these groups share many similarities, they each have their own distinct heritage, language, cultural practices, and spiritual beliefs. In cooperation with Indigenous organizations, the Government of Canada chose June 21st, the summer solstice, for National Aboriginal Day, which is now known as National Indigenous Peoples Day. For generations, many Indigenous peoples and communities have celebrated their culture and heritage on or near this day due to the significance of the summer solstice as the longest day of the year. As we prepare for Canada Day in our community, I think this is an opportune time for us to reflect on the heritage, cultures, and contributions of our Indigenous people. Observing our past, honoring those lost, and recognizing the Canada of today will strengthen all that unites us. We do this acknowledging a painful past, looking forward to a future with hope and a commitment of reconciliation. But what is reconciliation? Well, it begins by opening ourselves up to a truthful and inclusive dialogue. As you know, I was just in Saskatchewan a couple weeks ago, and I was struck by how tied the events and celebrations in the West are aligned with acknowledging the relationship they share with Indigenous cultures. In Ontario, I think we still have much to do. So I would encourage you all to do your part on this National Day of celebration and recognition. And this could happen in a variety of ways. Support a local Indigenous artist or author or an Indigenous charity. And it could be as simple as learning about the territories you may pass through or live on. The lands that our country is built on have histories of their own, and observing those histories tie us all together. Of course, we should all continue to familiarize ourselves with the Truth and Reconciliation Report and be part of what true reconciliation is. As municipal leaders, did you know that there are 9 calls in the report that speak to how municipalities can be part of reconciliation? So with all this in mind, I offer up this humble land acknowledgement. I would like to acknowledge that I am an ally of Indigenous people. Lucan Biddulph is on the traditional territories of the Attawandaron, Anishinaabe, Haudenosaunee, and Lenape peoples. We acknowledge that as settlers, this is a sacred land upon which we are privileged to live and work. We recognize the treaties made and broken, and we value the significant contributions both in the past and present of local and regional First Nations of Turtle Island. We are deeply grateful to have the opportunity to be in this place. We acknowledge that this is just the beginning of a process, and we commit to a continued journey of listening, learning, and building relationships. Okay, so tonight we do have a delegation with us this evening, and it is our friends from BM Ross who are going to be bringing forth a update to us with regards to the Lucan wastewater treatment plant expansion. This is an update. We've had a number of them over the time they've been working on this project. Councillor Regan and I have been part of a working group that have been updated more frequently than council, but it is at the point where council kind of needs to know some things and where we are at in the process. So I'm happy to welcome Matt Pearson, Lisa Courtney, and of course Steve Burns from BM Ross at this time. And I think I will hand it over to Matt at this point, and he can direct his team as he sees fit. So welcome, friends, and it's over to you.
Okay, that's better probably. You can hear me now. Thank you, Madam Mayor. Yes, we're here tonight to update council. It's good timing with Infrastructure Week. I'm just going to let you know we started this project back in February of 2021. So it's been about 16 months, which is a pretty fast pace to do a Class CA of this size. We were last at council on the 5th of November updating you. What we're going to talk about tonight is the draft of the class environmental study report. So the study report is sort of the end game of the whole process. So we're going to talk about it, and then what we do with it and where we go from here. I mean, it's that simple. You got control slides, Lise? There you go. Next one. Next one. There we go. So really, that's what I just said. We're going to talk about the preferred solution that came out of this process, technical details, some costs, and the next steps in the process. Okay. Going back a couple of steps, municipalities have to follow a class environmental assessment process in Ontario. It's for municipal infrastructure projects to meet the requirements of the Environmental Assessment Act. If you follow this, you end up with an approved project at the end. And no more process or red tape. This process allows you to evaluate alternatives and identifies impacts of things you might want to do and looks at methods for mitigating them. And we consider impacts not just to the natural environment, but to the social environment, cultural, and technical environments. So the Class CA document that you received in your package is really the end result of that. It provides transparency of what happened through the process. This little slide you've seen before, there's a more complicated one. It's in green. It has arrows and lines everywhere. We've done all that. We're down to number 4 on the process, which is submission of the report for public and government agency review. And you're getting the first look at it. And once we're done that, we will put it, assuming it's all right, we'll put it into the public record and do some more things. So we're pretty far along on it. Consultation is an important part of this. It's part of the transparency. It's required and regulated through the Class CA and the Ontario government. We start out consulting with review agencies that might have an interest, First Nations, property owners, and the public, and keep them informed of what's going on. We haven't received any major issues or concerns throughout this process. So that's a good thing. We'll do more consultation when it's out in the public record, and we'll see what comes from there. But at this stage of the game, we don't expect a lot of feedback, at least negative feedback. I think this is a positive thing for the municipality. Last time we talked to you, we did have some archaeology outstanding, and there's a checklist you look at to see if it needs an archaeological study, and it has to do with past finds in your area and the nearness of water, and it's really not what's going on there now, but what could have gone on in the past. So when you did the sewage treatment plant years ago, 30 odd years ago, there wasn't an archaeological assessment done on the site. So we're using the same site, and half of it's disturbed now because you put a plant in, but we were required to look at the other site. That fieldwork got done a month ago and nothing was found, which is a good thing for everybody. And a report's already been sent to the ministry to move this along. Right at the start of this, I mean, we know why you need a new sewage plant expansion, and you're running out of capacity in your old one. But there could be other things that we would need to look at. So first little while we focus on what it really is the problem, and that then directs us through the whole study. So we're not going off on tangents and looking at other things, like whether you need growth here or growth there, or no, we look at no growth. But so our problem statement is fairly simple. It just said you've had new growth and development at an accelerating pace over the past few years, and you're approaching the capacity of your plant, which was put in 30 years ago. So there's no surprise there. So we've just had nice steady growth for 30 years, and we need to get some additional capacity in there to accommodate the future. Steve's going to take it over and talk about the process.
Thank you, Matt. So as Matt indicated, the problem is that we can see in the future where we're going to run out of wastewater treatment capacity. The capacity has been diminishing because of growth. And one of the things that we wanted to do at the beginning was determine what the growth will be in the future, and what the related wastewater flows would be. So that's what this graph is showing. The county did the growth forecast. They did it for every municipality in the county, and the lines that were used, the growth estimates that were used to create this graph were projections made by the county. Their forecast included single-family units, multi-dwelling units, apartments, and so on. And we converted each of those different types of dwelling unit into something called an equivalent residential unit. So, and for our calculation purposes, a single-family dwelling is one equivalent residential unit, and multis and apartments are lesser. So we took the county forecast and turned it into a wastewater flow based on 1 cubic meter per day for each equivalent residential unit. So this graph is forecasting the growth in wastewater flow corresponding to a kind of a parallel growth in residential units. And county forecasted a high growth rate and a low growth rate. And the actual number of units, equivalent residential units, at the high rate was about 45 per year, and the low rate was about 26 per year, and they projected growth out till 2046, essentially 25 years. What this graph is showing is that at the projected rate, and at the high rate of growth, you would run out of capacity, available capacity, in about 2028. What's also important to council is that you would actually run out of the ability to allocate growth, approve new development sometime before 2028. And as it turns out, probably sometime within the next year or two, you would run out of the ability to approve new development. So next slide. So we know we need to increase capacity, and we looked at a number of ways that we might actually be able to do that. Some of this is kind of revisiting what we presented in November. Some of it will be new. But in November, we reported on having looked at 6 alternatives to increase capacity. And the first one was we looked at the feasibility of reducing the existing wastewater flow. That's always an opportunity. It's actually an important thing to do. And our analysis of that concluded that it could be done somewhat, but it would not provide sufficient capacity for growth. So as a standalone solution, it was rejected. We looked at just simply limiting community growth to available capacity. Again, that's an option, but it would be inconsistent with your planning policies and also with the counties and provinces' planning policies. So that again also was rejected as a solution. We looked at expanding the existing wastewater treatment plant to create capacity and concluded that that is definitely feasible. And so that alternative gets carried forward. We looked at the possibility of just simply constructing a new wastewater treatment plant. And again, that's a feasible thing, but we concluded that it was economically impractical and unnecessary. It would cost a significant capital cost to replace what is there when what is there functions well already. We looked at the possibility of re-rating the existing plant to create capacity and rejected that. And the reason really is that the Lucan wastewater plant has already been re-rated once. It was built originally to treat 1,100 cubic meters a day of waste. 10 or 12 years ago, it was re-rated to treat 1,700 with only a minor physical modifications to allow that re-rating. But it can't be, in our opinion, it cannot be re-rated again. And the last alternative is simply doing nothing. And doing nothing would not address the problem of requiring capacity for growth. Although technically, until we actually start expansion, the do nothing alternative, continues to be available to you. So, next slide.
Steve, I think I'm just going to interrupt you for a sec because Councillor
Sure.
Regan has a question.
Sure.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. So I've got Dan, Jeff, and the engineers here. So I have a question about slide 9 and the high growth, reference growth, low growth. So now that we've moved forward with our official plan and we have a really good idea what our growth is going to be, which line do we look at? Because I think, because before when this graph was done, we weren't sure. Now I think we're sure, and I'm just wondering where our line is.
Okay. We have
Thank you, Madam Mayor.
we have gone forward in our analysis looking at only the high growth line. We have also, in terms of kind of a sensitivity analysis, we have looked at what would happen if the high growth line was actually exceeded by 25%. So from 45 up to something like 56 units or something like that per year. But based on, recent history and expectations of the future, we only are now considering high growth. So does that answer what you're looking for?
Not really, but it just basically says that we're just worst case scenario is what we're looking at. Like the most growth we can possibly have just to be safe. Because I'm just wondering if residents are, and I'm just wondering just if we're using the different line, does that give us more capacity? Does that make this expansion last much longer? Does it add 5 years to it? As if we're using the high growth, it's X. If it's, if we're using low growth, or if the growth that we know of is it's going to be less. So can we can we expect to get another 5 years out of that, the new plant or the expansion to the plant? Sorry.
If growth were to occur at less than the high rate, then what we are recommending for expansion would last long. That's for sure. But but our analysis is really based on the worst case scenario.
All right. Thank you, Madam Mayor. Thank you very much, folks.
So the preferred alternative, which we'll go on here and explain what it would consist of, is the one that we have chosen and recommend. I think the key reasons are, and there's a number of them, is that it is cost effective to utilize the existing facilities rather than replacing them. The plant works well from a performance standpoint, and at 30 some years, it's still relatively young. The facilities are in good physical condition, and it is cost effective then to continue to use it. We always now consider the impacts of greenhouse gas, and if we utilize what's there rather than replace it, we would actually have lower greenhouse gas impacts. Not so much driven by the physical facility itself, but there would be less constructed if we utilize what is there. And so there's a significant benefit greenhouse gas wise to use what is there. The utilizing what is there by expanding it limits the impacts that would occur to the natural environment, the cultural environment, and also the social environment. The plant exists on a site. The impacts are well understood and defined, and by staying within that site, we limit and almost to the extent of eliminating any increased offsite impacts. The alternative of expansion certainly solves the problem. We're going to create capacity, which is the key to allowing growth, and certainly staying with expansion is consistent with current provincial policy for infrastructure. They would rather you utilize, the province would rather you utilize what you have than just simply discard and replace. So we're consistent with what the province would want you to do in this circumstance. So once we made a choice of the alternative, then we got drilled down into the detail of how that might actually happen. And we looked at a number of sort of alternatives again, related to how we would expand. And we looked at the value of staging the expansion. We looked at the possibility of changing the treatment process. We looked at, in this case, given that we would be expanding, we looked at the opportunity to decommission a Granton wastewater plant and treat then Granton's wastewater at Lucan. It's not a problem to treat at Granton, but it becomes an opportunity here given that we are expanding. And the fourth thing that we looked at is one of the major aspects of the physical expansion is how biosolids or sludge is addressed. And we looked at alternatives regarding how we would do that. So I'll go through these things, these alternatives one at a time. So the advantage of staging the expansion is that you can match capacity to growth and therefore match your capital expenditure to the demand for capacity. So by staging, you have the opportunity to then again align your expenditures to what might happen in terms of growth. Now, we established 3 criteria for what we felt would be feasible in terms of staging. And the first criteria was that we felt that it would be good if no work, if the work, any sort of physical expansion or even planning for expansion for stage 2 would begin for at least 10 years. So really no planning for at least 10 years. You wouldn't have to come back and revisit this issue for that period. The first stage should accommodate all current development commitments, developments that you have approved already, and as well as any known active development proposals. So these should be accommodated in stage 1. Stage 1 should also accommodate a reasonable number of future development proposals. And what's a reasonable number? Well, it's really up to council to decide, but historically, you have had commitments averaging somewhere in the order of 300, 350 units per year. So you have, as new development proposals have come along, you've approved them and had sort of in the bank 300 or so development proposals. And so that's again, the third criteria. So next slide, Lisa. So what we concluded regarding staging was that what we could achieve with a stage 1 expansion was increasing the capacity from 1,700 to 2,450 cubic meters a day. The wastewater plant is built in something referred to as trains. You have 2 trains, and if we were to expand it by adding a 3rd train, we could achieve up to 2,450 cubic meters a day. And then stage 2 then would go from 2,450 to 2,700. We have in discussions with the Ministry of the Environment, there are constraints imposed by the quality of the Heenan Drain and the Little Osable River that would limit capacity at this time to about 2,700. So we could go as a single project all the way to 2,700, or we could stage it and stop at 2,450. And we felt it's more economical to do it in 2 pieces, recognizing even that the second stage would be relatively small. Now, going back to that growth graph, stage 1 then actually would accommodate growth for 27 years. So we were hoping to achieve at least 10, and based on the high growth line, stage 1 is good for close to 27 years from, really 2021, I guess. Stage 1 would allow you to approve 800, more than 800 equivalent residential units in addition to your current commitments and proposals. So it provides considerable opportunity for council to evaluate and approve growth. So the economics indicate staging is good, and what it gives you in terms of capacity, indicates that it would meet any kind of criteria that you might have. So, next slide. We also looked at the benefits of and the opportunities to change the treatment process. The current treatment process is something called extended aeration. It's fairly common in small wastewater plants. If there is the possibility of creating some economic advantage by changing that process to new processes that have been developed since the plant was originally built. And we might do that to achieve energy savings. We might do it to achieve better effluent quality. Those would be the key reasons why you might do this. And what we concluded after a detailed review is that certainly for stage 1, there's no economic or significant energy benefit or even effluent quality benefit to changing the process. We did establish that you should look at this again, that opportunity, before you implemented stage 2, because there were indications that changing the process to more current concepts of how you would treat waste might have some advantage at stage 2, but certainly not at stage 1. So we've really recommended staying with the current treatment process. In terms of the Granton consideration, the reason you might do this is that if you were to eliminate the Granton wastewater plant, you would have an operating cost savings. At Granton, there's a labor component to operate the plant. There is also an energy cost and a chemical cost to operate that plant. There's also, you're setting aside money at the current time to replace components as they wear out. So there's the opportunity for saving. What we determined was that the payback term is based on current operating costs. It's probably in the order of 20 years. There would be a significant capital cost to pipe the wastewater to Lucan, and you would also use up part of the Lucan capacity if you were to do that. But just looking at the capital cost of a pipeline, we felt the payback would be in the order of a little over 20 years, which we judged was too far into the future to make this kind of the obvious thing to do. The other factor is that there's some uncertainty as to how fast Lucan may actually grow. And it may be that you would want the capacity that would be used up by Granton to actually be available for Lucan should it grow faster than the predicted high growth line. And again, if deciding not to do this now doesn't mean that you can't reevaluate this and decide to do it in the future. So we have recommended against decommissioning Granton at this time. And in terms of managing biosolids, what we were looking for is in our alternative evaluation, what was the most cost-effective approach? And there was two potential approaches that we examined. One is that you could expand the treatment facilities and build additional storage on site. Or alternatively, you could expand treatment on site, but use your existing lagoons, which you have available and are part of your system for the treated biosolid storage. Our conclusion there was that using the existing lagoons for biosolid storage is the preferred solution because economically, it is about $4 million cheaper to use the lagoon. And operationally, it's simpler than building and expanding additional storage on the other at the plant now. And the risks that might be associated with lagoon storage, which the risks are generally viewed in terms of odor and so on, are really very minimal. So lagoon storage has been done in a number of locations and with good success, and we believe it can be implemented here fairly easily. So in terms of managing biosolids, we have our preferred solution includes using the existing lagoon. So the preferred solution, the details of it are we would increase the capacity of the Chestnut sewage pumping station. The Chestnut station is, except for a minor amount that comes from your industrial park, all of the wastewater from Lucan goes through Chestnut to the plant. So we would need to increase the capacity of that station. We would construct a new headworks facility. The headworks is the first facility at the plant, waste and taking out grit, sanding small gravel and so on, and hard solids are part of the wastewater, and we like to take those out before it gets into the balance of the process. So you have a headworks now, but it is limited in capacity and challenging to expand. So we are recommending replacing it. The next sort of major component of the expansion would be to expand what's technically referred to as the secondary part of the process. We would add one aeration tank and one clarifier or settling tank. So take the two trains that are there now and add a third train. It's essentially identical to what is there with minor tweaks to make them work better. You filter your effluent now prior to disinfection and discharge, and we would add a third filter. There are two now. And we would upgrade the UV disinfection system to match the increased capacity. We would expand the biosolids digester, which is the treatment component of biosolids, and we would modify the existing lagoons and use them for treated biosolid storage. And then there'd be a lot of pumping, piping, control changes, electrical improvements, and so on that would be part of making all these other pieces work. So in terms of what this actually would look like on the ground, So this is a planned view of the plant. And the new expanded facilities are shown as cross-hatched lines. And so you can see there's a new headworks beside the existing headworks building would be decommissioned. Might choose to leave the building there and just take out what's inside of it. You might use it for storage or something. That decision will be made. There'll be a new aeration tank adjacent to the existing tanks, a third clarifier adjacent to the existing clarifiers, an expansion to the filter building to allow the addition of a third filter, and expansion of the UV system, which would not involve expanding the building, but it would be done in the building. And then down in the lower right-hand corner, the existing square, which shows up as like sort of 4 quadrants, would be which is now both treatment and storage, would be converted to treatment only and expanded to give us more treatment. And the biosolid storage would actually occur on the other side of Fallon Drive. So that's physically, and I guess one of the things to appreciate in this drawing is that you have lots of space in the site to have even a fourth expansion, or sorry, another expansion of the facilities, really in the format that we're doing them now. So we're not using up available land area. We could do this again if we wanted to. So next slide. So this is showing the existing lagoon. So the orientation is different on this drawing, which is really an aerial photograph, probably a satellite image. So you see the existing plant at the top on the north side of Fallon Drive, and the existing lagoons on the south side. And we would, the current thinking is that we would treat the biosolids or sludge on the north side and pump it across to what is called cell 2, or the east cell on the south side for storage. Periodically, at 5-year intervals, maybe initially 10 or more years, wastewater would be, or the biosolids would be taken out of the cell and transported for land disposal, and to create, again, additional capacity in that cell. Now, what we're showing in this particular drawing is that we would have accessed cell 2 from the plant via an easement across farm field to the cell. And it's really become apparent in the last few days that that easement may not be available. It probably isn't available, in which case the route that we would take would be to follow Fallon Drive and the access road into the lagoon and across to access that cell. Another option that we explored and might look at is using part of cell 1 for sludge storage as well, in lieu of cell 2. So there's a couple of technical options, but the key here is that we intend to use the lagoon and we can physically access it without going on anybody else's property. So that's the intention with respect to biosolid storage. So we've defined the alternative, the preferred alternative, and we put an opinion of cost to that based on what we can see now for this type of work. You're looking at something approaching $16.5 million to build the works. Now, we went on to determine what part of that cost might be related to creating capacity for growth, and that was about $12.6 million. And what part of the cost might be to address the existing need for rehabilitation and to address capacity deficiency. So the key rehab item was the replacement of the existing headworks. Most of the physical facilities there are worn out and have achieved their useful life. And there's a capacity deficiency at both the headworks and in more particularly in the biosolids management part, sludge treatment and storage. So there's a cost to address, to upgrade what is there, which we would view differently than simply the cost for growth. And the last little sentence there is that in 2022, there's a lot of uncertainty regarding what the costs will be. Inflation, which is certainly a topic in a number of things these days, is having a significant impact on construction costs, greater than their impact on gasoline prices and a variety of other things. So construction costs are uncertain. So that's, I think, Matt, I'll turn it back to you to talk about how we would address cost recovery.
Sure. So as Steve explained, the costs go into two categories. So there's the actual cost for getting increased capacity at the plant, and there's the cost related to rehabilitation of existing works. And he split out those costs. We would recover them two different ways. So for the new capacity, the growth, we would use the development charges. And we've talked about this throughout this project. And for the rehab part of that, you can't just charge that to new development because it's an existing deficiency at your plant. And so the plan for that would be to collect that through your sewage rates and your reserves that you've set aside for sewage, sort of under your asset management program. So these, as you've read in the report, these are both considerable numbers, and you don't have $12.5 million sitting around to expand your plan. So we predicated our analysis on that. You'd have to get a debenture when you're done building this. I mean, you'd borrow money as you went along to build it, and then eventually you would take a debenture out, and probably for at least 20 years, and which coincides with the length of expected length of the plant. So because you can collect that interest on the debenture from development charges as well. Just like a mortgage on a house, it increases the cost considerably over 20 years, even at a rate of 4 or 5%. As Steve mentioned, there's a lot of cost uncertainty. Well, we won't be able to nail this down quite yet, but we will. We're working on a development charge bylaw for you with a new report. So we expect by the start of next year, you'll be able to start collecting for this project. I expect as costs come in and this gets built, the number we collect will be adjusted and to match the reality. But if you did read the report, I think I've estimated development charge for sewage probably in the range of $20,000 for a household. Coincidentally, we're doing northwest of you, we're doing another sewage plant. It's further along the process than you. And we actually just redid their development charges bylaw a couple of weeks ago. and their costs are quite similar per ERU, which is equivalent residential unit. So that's good. It gives us confidence the numbers in the right range. So that's in the report, just so we have some idea of how you're gonna pay for this thing. And fortunately, you've got lots of development because we have to build this thing as a train. We don't get to build half a train, so we do have to build it large enough and have enough growth coming in to pay for it in a reasonable amount of time. Next steps in our process is we would have a public meeting because we're required to under the act, and we should hold one. And you can have that before a council meeting some night, and take any feedback we get from tonight. And we've also got the document out with the Ministry of Environment, in Conservation and Parks, I think they're called now. They told us when we got a draft they wanted to review it, but they take 45 days to do it. So we've got it out to them already, and so that will come along, and with probably some suggestions. But they don't have at this stage of the game anyway an approval on this thing. They're just a review agency. We'll hold our final public meeting. We issue notice of completion at the same time. There's a standard statutory 30-day public review period, and so the ESR gets posted on your website and it's available for review. Failing any, and there are less reasons for somebody to do what they used to call a bump up on these, where you could say, I want more work done on it. And the government streamlined that a couple of years ago. So there's less ability of the public to actually change change what we're doing or complain about what we're doing. Okay, Lise. So post the Class EA implementation, and this is a timeline worked out to get this plant built in a reasonable time, well before we run out of capacity. We would start detailed design later this summer, apply for approvals next spring. There's quite a bit of work goes into this. This is a big design. They pre-select all the major equipment and complete the design. And here's where at that point, you're going to find out what all these supply chain shortages might mean, because right now you don't know. But it's a very fluid, evolving environment out there in terms of buying equipment. You finish the design, you could issue tenders in 2023, award the contract and build this over about a year and a half, and commission it late in 24, early 25, I would say. So it's right along the timelines we've talked about for about a year and a half now, 2 years. So that's where it stands today. And that's it. We'll take questions on what you discerned out of that.
Well, thank you very much for that presentation and walk through, Steve. We appreciate the steps. I think that you have made it understandable for the layman around the horseshoe. And so we certainly appreciate that. Are there any questions or comments from council on the presentation? Councillor Hodgins.
Thank you. Great report, great presentation, very thorough. I may have a couple questions. I guess my first question, with respect to looking at alternate treatment processes, we get regular reporting from Aqua on the effluent quality, and we have been getting it has been coming in over our limits, the MECP limits, and in some cases double our targets for things like total suspended solids. So I think it was mentioned that in stage one, there's no benefit in changing the process, but that would be reevaluated in stage two. But is there anything that we would be able to look at in stage one that would be able to address some of these effluent quality issues that we're having, or is that more of an operational issue that we're having?
Um, Through you, Madam Mayor, there are things that we will do in the expansion that would be focused on making the existing parts of the plant work better. There are a couple, suspended solids is one of them. Getting a little better phosphorus removal is another one. And we feel that and sort of part of the work that would be done would be not just adding facilities, but making some what I believe would be relatively minor modifications to what is there to make it work better. And we would do all of that in consultation with the operators, because I think they know best what needs to be done. But it's part of the project to make what is there work better.
Great, thank you. If I may continue with separate questions. With respect to extraneous flows, inflow and infiltration that I think were noted as ours aren't too bad. They're relatively low compared to some other systems. The report mentioned that programs to eliminate these extraneous flows should continue. I believe that these programs to address inflow and infiltration are beyond the scope of this assignment and the expansion of the wastewater treatment plant. So perhaps the staff, just a question, where do these types of programs fit into our infrastructure program? Are those already built into our program? Or is this something that staff may need direction from council to pursue? Thanks.
Yeah, Madam Mayor, if I can address that. So presently, we don't have an official program in place. We do visualization, and we monitor our flows to see if they're increasing and to see if we want to. But I think one of the key things that Councillor Hodgins said, that we would, if we were to implement a program, we would look for direction from council on that, because it would be a change in what we're doing right now, and it would have a cost effect on the overall budget of the system. So
Okay, thank you. Maybe I'll allow other councillors to speak for now.
Okay, Councillor Regan.
Thank you. Thank you, Councillor Hodgins. Thank you, Madam Mayor. I do have a question. We're starting about next steps and talking about the design details. And I'm just wondering, one of the things that we've talked about is that there are so many changes that are coming up with new technologies with how to treat waste. And I'm just wondering, when we think about the design, are we going to make this adaptable just to be able to accept any of the new changes that come out? Because we know there's somebody sitting somewhere right now with a great idea about a different way to treat waste. So I'm just wondering if we'll be able to incorporate that in design or think about that with the design going forward. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Through you, Madam Mayor, yes, we will certainly do that. We would be cautious though, because there's a number of different ways it could be done, and we can't really position ourselves to be ready for all the things that all the good ideas that might come along, but we can make sure that we don't do anything that would prevent us changing things in the future. Sort of, I would look at it as sort of creating the maximum amount of flexibility that is economically feasible to do.
Yep. Did you have follow-up?
No, thank you, Madam.
Okay. Any other questions, comments? Did you want to continue, Councillor Hodgins?
Yes, thank you. With respect to the biosolids and using the lagoons for storage, have the lagoons been used for storage of biosolids in the past or before? And I guess, are there concerns with odors just with the proximity of those existing lagoons the soccer complex and the other residential area?
Through you, Madam Mayor, the lagoons have been used for biosolids storage. From time to time, the existing storage facilities have become full before it was possible to dispose on the land. So some amounts of sludge have been trucked over and discharged into the lagoon, but not in relative to the size of the lagoon, not a big factor. In terms of odor, we are confident that although there's the risk that there might be an odor, we don't think that it would be a concern. I think the risks are quite small. We have looked at with the committee, we toured a couple of facilities that have very similar application, and although there's odor from any lagoon, whether it's sludge or just a lagoon, it's not from my perspective offensive, and to a large extent wouldn't even be noticed. So I think the risk is there, but extremely small, and it's just as likely that you would have odor issues if we started at the plant. But so I'm not sure if that provides a level of comfort or not, but I think the risks are very small.
I might just jump in before your follow-up, Jayden. Councillor Regan and I and Jeff and Ron and Julie and John and Andrew, we took the field trip with Steve. And I think the one, we went to Seaforth and we went to Mitchell. I think the one from Mitchell probably, even though it was a larger facility, they have sports fields close to them. And I mean, from my own personal experience, I've been to ball games there and it hasn't been an issue. Certainly the day we were there, it was a winter day, there wasn't any issue. But in speaking to the staff there, you know, I would echo what Steve said. I think we all walked away with a level of confidence that odors, while there's the risk, would not be overpowering and create an environment for our residents that was uncomfortable.
Okay, thank you. With the staged approach of constructing this, like not coming back no sooner than 10 years and potentially not for another 20 years, at that subsequent second stage of expansion, do we have to go through this process again, or through this EA, is that pre-approved and we can just streamline that project?
From an environmental assessment standpoint, you would be pre-approved. It would still be necessary to prepare engineering drawings and so on and get those approved by the ministry. So there's still approval requirements, but nothing of the nature that we're doing now. We are really doing this environmental assessment to include stage 2.
Okay, thank you. One final question, if I may. You touched on, or Mr. Pearson, you touched on the potential increase to the DCs. I think the report did talk about the increase in user rates for the rehabilitation work. Just wondering how much of an impact that would have on user rates for the sewer system, like a rough estimate, or if that could be determined, or if that's available.
Yeah. I don't think we actually calculated an increase to the user rates. We determined there was some money available in reserves to bring that initial cost down. But I don't think we calculated an increase to your user rates.
Jeff, did you have something you might be able to provide for us?
Yeah, and if, just to follow up through the mayor, so as we collect our capital reserve fees through our utility billing, that capital fee is designed to pay for the replacement of our system. So we actually are collecting money and have been for the replacement of the headworks, the pipes in the ground, the pumping stations, and that sort of thing. So I know we don't have all the money sitting in the bank, but we are, that's what that capital reserve is designed to do. So, and I think Steve or Matt touched on it. If we put a financial plan together over the next, number of years, as we keep collecting that capital reserve, we should be, it shouldn't have a real overall effect on that capital reserve by drastically rising or something along those lines.
I guess one thing to add to that is that as your new development comes on stream and becomes customers, they start contributing to your collection of asset management monies, and you have another source. So it won't, it's hard to predict right now whether it'll be a balance like nothing, but I think the municipality has a good handle on this.
Okay, thank you very much. And thank you for the report and the presentation. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Okay, any final questions? So thank you very much. I was just going to touch on the costs that you spelt out, and I wanted to just say I appreciate how it is split up between the cost for growth and cost for rehab and deficiencies. I think throughout the whole process for the last 16 months, we've known that the headworks have had to be replaced, and we know that that is going to be a cost to the existing user system. And I think that it's important in our communications that we just have to always remember that the project that we're undertaking, there is a component to it that the existing user is going to have to be responsible for. So as much as we say this is a growth project, of which obviously the majority of it is, we have to be mindful that our residents today still know that they have a responsibility to be part of paying for the rehab and the deficiencies that we have now. So I appreciate that is spelt out, and I know that my colleagues around the Horseshoe, when you have conversations with our residents, that you keep that in mind, because there is a cost to the people on the system now. So I appreciate you including that so boldly in the presentation. But with that, I don't see any other questions. I would echo what Councillor Hodgins said. Thank you to Matt and Lisa and Steve for that report. It was very thorough. It was very understandable, and we certainly have appreciated it. So thank you for that, and enjoy the rest of the evening.
Okay, thank you for having us.
Okay.
Bye now.
I will ask though for a verbal motion just to accept BM Ross's report for information. Councillor Westman and Councillor Regan. And all in favor, and that is carried. Okay.
Thank you.
We do have another delegation, but I'm just going to ask him or presentation to hold on tight, because we did have a planning meeting scheduled at 6, and I know we've got some in the waiting room, so I'd like to do that, and then we will circle back to our presentation. So I do have a motion in front of us that council adjourn its regular meeting in order to sit as a committee of adjustment under the Planning Act. And if I can get a mover and a seconder, Councillor Regan and Councillor Hodgins. All in favor, and that is carried. So we do have a report in front of us, PL-15-2022, and it's a minor variance application. And we're actually joined by Abby Heddle, who is another planner with the County of Middlesex, and she's taking on this application tonight. I think some of you have met her, possibly not, but welcome, Abby. It's great to have you with us and join us tonight. And I will turn it over to you.
Thank you, Your Worship. So the purpose of this application is to seek relief from the zoning bylaw to reduce a minimum distance separation 1 setback and to reduce the required front yard setback to permit the development of an additional temporary dwelling. The subject property is a 75-acre lot, and I will make note that I did make an error in my report with regards to the size of the property, but it is a 75-acre lot that is situated on the west side of Corsie Line, north of William Street. The property is occupied by a single unit dwelling and an existing uninsulated storage barn and is serviced by a private well and septic system. The rear portion of the property contains a decommissioned gravel pit, currently in the remediation process as per the license under the Aggregate Resources Act. The property is designated agricultural under the official plan and is zoned general agricultural A1 and extractive industrial M3. The A1 zone allows for a single unit dwelling and various agricultural uses. The applicants are proposing to construct a second dwelling unit in the form of a temporary mobile home as a means to provide accommodation for family members who assist with the general maintenance of the property. It should be noted that the construction of a temporary mobile home is not currently permitted in the A1 zone, and as such, the applicants will be required to obtain a rezoning to establish a temporary use. The mobile home is proposed to be located in the south interior side yard in front of the existing uninsulated barn, and it would comply with the interior side yard setback requirements of the zoning bylaw. Given that these lands are significantly constrained by both natural heritage features and a tributary that traverses the property, the applicants are limited in where they can place the mobile home. As such, the applicants are requesting an MDS1 setback of 212 meters or a 74-meter reduction from what is required, and a front yard setback of 20.03 meters, whereas the bylaw requires 28 meters. Staff have evaluated the application against the 4 tests under the Planning Act and are satisfied that each test has been met for the reasons outlined in my report. In terms of agency comments received, a letter was received from the Asable Bayfield Conservation Authority citing no concerns. And in terms of comments received from the public, none were received prior to the preparation of my report. It is therefore the recommendation of staff, Your Worship, that the application be approved subject to the reasons outlined in my report and subject to the following conditions. Number 1, that the building be constructed in the same general location as shown on the concept site plan. And number 2, that the applicant obtain a zoning bylaw to establish a temporary use to allow for the construction of the mobile home. Thank you.
Okay, thank you for that, Abby. We do have the applicant has joined us, Mr. and Mrs. Thomas. I don't know if you had any comments at this point.
Just here to answer questions. No, at this point we don't. Thank you.
Okay, all right. Thank you, Wendy. And before I open it up to comments from council, we do have one member of the public who has requested participation, and that was Mr. Dave Taylor. And Mr. Taylor, do you have any comment to make at this point?
Yeah, can you hear me?
Yep, we can hear
I
you.
just
We can
had-
see you. So
Yeah, perfect, excellent. Yeah, I just had a couple comments before you get going. I just want to know if it has been passed. I just want to know how you get to the actual distance, the minimum distance from the actual barn, and how you got there. If this is approved, and where it can be actually, what is the actual minimal requirement for future for myself and my farm across the road. There's something else that I was just inquiring about as well, is I didn't know what A4, I didn't understand A4. I don't know if that's all right. The minor variance of an A4, I didn't see that on the Middlesex website. There's only A1, A2. So I was just curious about that as well.
Okay.
And that's my
Okay, appreciate that. I guess clarification on what the A4 is. We'll start with that. Is that just the application number?
Madam Mayor, if I may, I think that's the application number. Mr. Taylor is A-4/2022 is the application number. So that's the minor variance application number. It's not the zoning designation, so it's not.
Okay.
A2. It's A4 is the application number. Okay.
okay. It wasn't clear in the website. That's all.
Okay.
Okay, I appreciate that.
Yeah, and maybe we can have Abby Heddle from the county explain how the minimum distance separation, the actual distance is measured.
Yeah.
Yep, so we actually use a program called AgriSuite. And essentially what it does is it takes into consideration the number of livestock heads, the type of manure storage, and various other intricacies, I guess, that are generally site specific to each individual farm. And it will compute a number essentially, and it will provide a minimum distance for us.
And what was that? And you have those numbers and what you have?
Yeah, so the minimum distance.
Yeah, what was the absolute minimum distance that came up out of those results?
So 286 meters.
Okay, but that's the, so that is the bare minimum. That's the minimum, right? And they're asking for, okay, carry on.
Okay. Did you have anything else, Mr.
No, that's good.
Yes,
For now.
Mr. Taylor?
That's good for now. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. All right, then I will open it up to council for any comments or clarification, or the committee on this application. Councillor Hodgins.
Thank you. I was unable to access the concept site plan file. I didn't see an attachment, so I'm just wondering if that could be shared on the screen for council's viewing. I'm not sure if others were able to see it or not.
It was just the location map that was on, but no concept site plan.
Sorry, that may have been an error on my part. I could email it to Lisa right now.
Abby, do you have it? Do you have the site plan, the concept site plan?
Yeah, I can bring it up.
Okay, perfect.
All right, so I've shared my screen.
Yeah, we've got it. We can see it.
Perfect.
Thanks.
Okay, thank you for that. Yeah, I have a question or two. So first question, is this considered an additional residential unit, an ARU, like we recently saw with our OPA update?
So with a mobile home, we will be requiring that they go through a zoning bylaw amendment to establish a temporary use. And so with that, it will be temporary in nature. And you can renew temporary uses for a period of 3 years. But yeah, so this doesn't really constitute an ARU. given the temporary nature of the mobile home.
Okay, thank you. And just a follow up that actually ties into what you were saying there. With it being a temporary mobile home, what's the duration that it's proposed to be on the site?
Generally 20 years is what the temporary use bylaw would allow for. And then you can renew them usually for a period of up to 3 years at a time.
So joining us also is our planner, Dan Fitzgerald. He might just have some clarification on that, on our particular bylaw. So Dan, did you just want to jump in?
Yeah, through the chair to council, especially Councillor Hodgins. So you asked an interesting question about, is this an additional residential unit? So as you know, based on our official plan policy that we did recently pass, which is still obviously subject to county review, the additional residential unit policy is actually more specific to permanent forms of housing and not these temporary forms of housing. So there's a distinction in the Planning Act between what they refer to as garden suites as a temporary format of housing, and then an additional residential unit, which in our instance is intended to be a permanent solution for the lands. So in this case, as a temporary garden suite, based on the Planning Act, we would only assess it as that temporary use, so that, and there's only certain formats of development that would qualify as that temporary use. So in this case, we refer to them as manufactured home or mobile home, which is generally built on a chassis with wheels that can be taken away easily from the site. Whereas our distinction with the additional residential unit, again, is for all intents and purposes, we would view it as a single detached family dwelling.
Do you have any further follow-up?
No, I'm good. Thank you.
Okay. All right. Any other questions or comments from council on this? Okay. I will give the opportunity to Mr. and Mrs. Thomas, if you had anything further after the comments that you were heard.
Yes, just to let it be known that this will not be on the property for any long period of time. Probably not even the 10 years that is currently allowed. It is a temporary dwelling. Just to confirm that.
Okay, thank you for that. We appreciate that clarification. And then Mr. Taylor, did you have any last comments?
Yeah, exactly what Wendy was saying. I just want to know what temporary, 20 years doesn't sound like temporary. That's what I'm getting at. So I just want to clarify that. And if there is going to be a actual timeline and what, if it is passed, how did you come to that, to 212 meters? I just want to know how you came to that number. That's all. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. I think that's just the 212 was just come because of the site plan design. If I can, I guess maybe I'm speaking for the applicant and the planner, but it would be because of the site plan. It would be because of the site plan design.
Right, and that's correct. And the purpose I'm getting at, kind of what I'm getting at as well, is I would also like to do a minor variance, so as well. So okay. I just want to know how close I can also get a minor variance to the barn as well for future.
Okay. So Mr. Taylor, I appreciate that, and I appreciate
no problem. Is
the
that
concern. But we have to remember that we're here to talk about the application.
I know.
In front
Okay.
of us.
Yeah,
and I would encourage you to call the planning department to have that discussion.
No problem. Yeah.
Okay. All right.
No problem.
Thank you. If there are no other questions or comments from council, then we do have a motion in front of us. It is fairly lengthy, so I won't read it in its entirety for anybody watching us or watching back on YouTube. The actual full motion can be found on our agenda, but it is in essence that that the application be approved, and it states the following reasons why. And it should be noted that the conditions applied to it would be that the building be constructed in the same general location as shown on the concept site plan, and that the applicant obtain a zoning bylaw amendment to establish a temporary use to allow for the construction of the mobile home. Can I get a mover and a seconder for that, please? Councillor Regan and Councillor Hodgins. All in favor? And that is carried. Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Abby. Okay. And with that, I would ask for a mover and a seconder for the motion that the committee does rise at 6:58 and reconvene our regular council meeting. Councillor Westman and Councillor Hodgins, all in favor, and that is carried. So now we're going to go back to a presentation that we've got to make. We appreciate the patience of our guests this evening. And at this time, I would like to ask former Mayor Tom McLaughlin to join me up front, please. And don't worry, you're not in trouble. So of course, former Mayor McLaughlin is no stranger to council, to our staff, to our residents. And we're June, so it's great to have you here tonight. And June is Seniors Month. And as such, we are allowed to present a worthy resident of our community, the Senior of the Year Award. And this year, we are presenting it to you on behalf of the province of Ontario for the township of Lucan Biddulph. So, and this is really to acknowledge the commitment to community that you have, Tom. There's no secret that even though your time serving as an elected official is done, you are still committed to all things Lucan Biddulph. And your work at the museum and how you volunteer there with heritage, people looking for stories on their family roots and helping them get a better understanding of where they have come from, and is no secret. You have created connections to people, I would dare say, all around the world, where you have created family trees for people looking for answers as to where they've come from. And so with that, you've created connections to Lucan Biddulph. And you know, the museum would not function, I don't think, without the work that you do there. And then of course, most recently, you have joined us on the development building campaign for the arena project, and you've taken on a significant role with that committee, and that cannot go unnoticed or understated. So those are just a couple of things you've got your hand in at the moment, but we know, as I say, that your love of community is not unnoticed, and we appreciate the work that you've done, and there's nobody else I can think of that's a more deserving Senior of the Year for 2022. So congratulations.
Well, thank you very much for those kind words. And one thing I would say that I don't see any of this as work. I see it enjoyment. So I really enjoy being involved in the community and doing the things that I do. And it certainly is appreciated, the recognition. I thank you very much for those kind words and the recognition. Also, I would say that I think there's a lot of people in our township, though, that are just as deserving as me, and maybe more so. And so I hope in the future they get similar recognition and that type of thing. And so thank you very much. And I'll be keeping around. I was a little bit, I was a little bit confused about the senior part. But
I know. Well, I know. We know as you've been skating around, you know, the rink all winter long, that, you know, I'm sure you can keep up to anybody. So
Thank you very much.
I think Lisa wants to take a picture. You know, hold your plaque up. Thank you very much, Tom. Just don't heckle. Okay, so where does this take us? Okay, to the minutes. So we have in front of us the council minutes from June 7th. And I know that you've all had opportunity to review them. And if there doesn't need it to be anything amended, I would ask for a mover and a seconder to approve the minutes as circulated. Councillor Westman and Councillor Regan, all in favor, and that is carried. There is no business arising from the minutes or that has been added, but I didn't know if council saw anything on the minutes that they wanted added. Okay, then we will move on to correspondence. So the first one up was a letter that we received from Amanda Jackman. And Paul, did you want to speak to this?
Yes, if I may, through you, Madam Mayor. This request is, just so council is aware, it's a very easy request for us to accommodate. The late evening hours also, the splash pad does not see a lot of movement or activity, so it would not be a significant cost to the township to extend the hours of the township, the splash pad. So it's a very easy thing to accommodate, and our department has no problem facilitating this.
Okay, and that is just something that you can do on your own with switching the timer.
Yeah, it's a very, very easy adjustment on our end.
Okay, that is good. I think will be appreciated by all the young ones. And then moving on to the next one, and this is follow up from our last council meeting when we reviewed some of the resolutions that were received with regards to voluntary Russian sanctions. And let me just pull this up here. Staff had provided some examples of what some other communities had done, and whether it was just to be as supportive of some of the motions out there or resolutions out there, or it was to draft our own. And I took it upon myself to draft one, and I did share it with council and with Tina and Ron, but for the benefit of those watching, I will read it. And I know that it'll be properly clerked up. But that basically that the correspondence dated April 19th, 2022 from the town of Gravenhurst regarding sanctions on Russia be received, and that the township of Lucan Biddulph acknowledges the country of Ukraine has experienced a premeditated and unprovoked invasion by Russia, and that the township of Lucan Biddulph acknowledges that silence is complicity, and that the township of Lucan Biddulph supports the sanctions related to Russia that have been enacted under the Special Economic Measures Act in order to respond to the gravity of Russia's violation of the sovereignty and territorial integrity of Ukraine and grave human rights violations that have been committed in Russia. And that the township of Lucan Biddulph supports the sanctions related to Belarus that have been enacted under the Special Economic Measures Act in response to the gross and systematic human rights violations that have been committed in Belarus, as well as Belarus's support of the Russian Federation's violation of the sovereignty and territorial integrity of Ukraine, which constitutes a grave breach of international peace and security that has resulted in serious international crisis. And that this decision of Lucan Biddulph Council be forwarded to all other municipalities within Ontario requesting they enact similar measures so that as a united front, we can make a noticeable difference. And I would welcome comment on that. Councillor Regan.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. My only comment is if I fully support that. I would, yes, absolutely. Thank you. Thank you for writing it.
Well, and we, of course, we did have a discussion about this at last council meeting, so this really should come as no surprise. And if everybody's comfortable with that wording, then I would ask for a mover and a seconder, and we can get that going. Is that okay with you? Okay. Councillor Regan and Councillor Hodgins, and should be noted all three hands were up for that. All in favor, and that is carried. Okay, that takes us to the balance of correspondence. And I wondered if there was anything from council that they wanted to discuss from the items that were received. Councillor Regan.
Yep, sorry, I'm actually having trouble finding it right now, but the one from, there was one from AMO, I thought, about delegations, and I'm just wondering if we're having any delegations in August? If I could ask that, or should I wait? Oh, all right, thank you, Madam Mayor.
Through you, Madam Mayor, we've already approached the county with regards to the Bill 109 changes and what impact that's going to have upon municipalities. So we are coordinating a delegation through the county. County clerk is coordinating that one with support from the lower tiers. So that's one. The mayor and I have discussed a few more. And right now it just escaped my memory. What,
I just brought up infrastructure.
infrastructure, yes. When we were going through the report from BM Ross, obviously, right as of now, there is no provincial programs that would support that kind of grant towards that project. Obviously, growth helps not only the lower tier municipalities, but the counties, the province, the federal government. It's an economic driver. So we can put in a request to the Minister of Infrastructure for a meeting to try and sort of push our case and I guess beg for some grant money if at all possible. It never hurts to ask. And then there was one more that we had talked about. Yeah. So we will be requesting it.
Thank you, Ron. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
And I think the deadline is Friday.
June 10th.
So I don't know.
24th.
Yeah.
24th.
yeah, so we'll have to get on that this week. Was there anything else council wanted to pull from communications? Okay, no. Seeing none, then I would ask for a mover and a seconder that items 10.1 through 10.3 are correspondence be received for information purposes. Councillor Westman and Councillor Hodgins. All in favor? And that's carried. On to committee reports. Blue Water. Deputy Mayor is obviously not joining us this evening. Actually, I did have one question though. And maybe, I don't know whether Jeff can help me, and I apologize for not giving you the heads up on this. But last week when Alice Street wasn't picked up, and then they came around on Monday to pick up Alice Street. I just wondered what the communication process is. Do we know what Blue Water's communication process is to the residents, or do they just leave it up to chance? Because I think we got the notification, I don't know, was it about 6:30 in the morning that they were going to come back? And I thought, how do we let the residents know beyond social media? I mean, Alice Street's not a big street, so I don't know.
Madam Mayor, I'm not aware of any complaints that we actually got, so I'm hoping that the communication was good enough that we didn't receive complaints, because typically people are pretty quick to pick up the phone and complain to us if their garbage didn't get picked up, and we didn't, not to my knowledge, did we receive any complaints like that? So I've got my fingers crossed that that Blue Water actually did a pretty good job communicating that. However they did, I don't know. We can certainly ask and find out.
Yeah, Jeff.
Yes, so Madam Mayor, just to follow up with the comments Ron. Generally, that is our first thing is a call from the public to notify us sooner than later. Surprisingly, we did not receive a call on Friday. So we are unaware of that there was an issue. There is obviously a number that Blue Water does have and is advertised that residents can call directly with a problem. But in this case, I mean, we're a little bit behind. You know, people are already starting to go to work and going about their business prior to even the municipality knowing that there was a problem on Friday and not notifying or not realizing till Monday that there was one. So in this case, there was a little bit of lag time there, but generally that doesn't happen. I must say that generally we usually hear right away when there's an issue. So.
Thank you. All right, moving on to CEDC.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. We met actually last night, EDC, and we reviewed a CIP application from the museum, which was approved, the maximum 5,000 for the projects. There's two little projects combined into one. That was approved, and we had some discussion afterwards about some downtown, maybe public art or activations, those sort of things, to be further reviewed. That was everything. Thanks.
Okay, thank you. Nothing from Lake Huron, nothing from the fire boards, except I know that the Granton Fire Department had a very successful pork chop dinner on Saturday. I think they cooked over 700, I think it was 750 meals, which meant 1,500 pork chops. So it was very successful for the Granton Fire Department. ABCA and Upper Thames.
I just wanted to say that I had tickets for the barbecue, but I gave them up because they were sold out and people were really looking for them. So I'm just me, so I gave them to somebody else. We've met with the Sable Bayfield Conservation Authority on June 16th. The Upper Thames is next week, so I can report on ABCA. A lot of our discussions are obviously to do with the Conservation Act and the changes to that. So it's an ongoing process that as we get updates, we try to adjust our operations and policies to meet the changes. One of the things that has become an issue with the Sable Bayfield and the Upper Thames continues to be a problem is permits. When people are doing renovations and construction and changes, they're not everybody's attaining their appropriate permits, whether from the municipalities or from the Conservation Authority. So we've had, over the time I've been on the board, a number of properties, especially up along the lake and cottage country, where major renovations are being done, up to and including the tear down of the old family cottage and a building of a brand new one, done without permits at all. And when they're reported, we obviously send out our staff to go and investigate it and determine what needs to be done as far as enforcement or work stoppages or things like that. So, you know, it's always in the best interest of all parties, include most prevalently the property owners, to get the proper permits in place for their own well-being, because the failure to do so, we can order work stoppages on it. We can also issue big fines, and some of the fines that get issued are in tens of thousands of dollars. Contractors that do the work without permits can lose their licensing, and the property owners obviously end up incurring legal costs and reconstruct, like rebuilding costs or fines as well. So we want to encourage people to go through the permit process, make sure you get it done right. And it's for their protection as much as anything, because with the permit process, you get the advantage of the building inspector letting you know that, okay, this particular construction is not recommended for this area, or it's not allowed in this area. So you should be able to do it this way instead of that. And then in the end, you know, it can save them a lot of grief, especially when it comes to construction and design, where, you know, a simple thing of roof trusses can matter when it comes to snow load, and a building could suffer a collapse if there's a heavy snow load. We, like all the municipalities, we've been in the process of doing a complete asset assessment, where we did our asset management plan. We with the municipality, we're doing a similar thing, and it's part of the province's changes to the Conservation Act. They want to know what we have in our coffers as far as assets, property. The big thing is land. Conservation authorities have a lot of land, and you know, some of it is obviously protected wetlands and forest and things like that, but we also in many occasions will own arable farmland that we rent out, and in some cases residential properties that we rent out. So that's something we're looking at, and there may be a call for some of that to be liquidated to help offset the cost of capital projects and get us out of the land ownership business. If it's not protected conservation land, well, then why should we have it? Rosalind Ching is one of our staff members who was involved in the wastewater or the stormwater pond out here and working with Paul and with our recreation staff to plant trees and do a lot of work. She gave a wonderful presentation, and the stars of that presentation was Lucan Biddulph is one of the biggest participants in some of these projects where we do tree planting and cover crop and pollinator gardens. And she mentioned Paul very much by name, and also Councillor Reagan, who was there up to his knees in mud planting trees. And so it was a proud moment for me on the board to see that we are leading the way as far as using the Conservation Authority to our best advantage, especially with using, like, every municipality that has growth in residential growth, it's going to have a stormwater management pond. And the insight of our recreation manager to let's beautify that and make it into something that we can use as a amenity within the community, and it's quite affordable to do so. So planting trees and indigenous plants that will make it into a beautiful natural space for generations and generations and generations to come. It's a great thing. So yeah, it was a very uplifting meeting. I was pretty excited about everything that we did there. So that's it.
Very good. Thank you very much, Councillor Westman. Parks and Rec.
Thank you through Madam Mayor. We are moving the Parks and Rec meeting to July 6th. This to align with the closing of tender for the multipurpose courts as it was resubmitted, just so we can have it go through the committee before the July meeting of council.
Okay, thank you very much. Then we will move on to our staff reports, and Ron, you are up first.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Included in your package tonight is the delegation of site plan appointment. And this is a bit of a follow-up from Dan Fitzgerald's presentation at the last meeting of council. It has to do with Bill 109, which is entitled the More Homes for Everyone Act, piece of provincial legislation. Part of that act requires that council prior to July 1st enact or appoint a staff member to be the approval authority for site plans. So with that in mind, the proposal is before council tonight is that the public works manager be appointed the primary and the chief building official be appointed the secondary for site plan approvals, beginning with the passage of the bylaw, should council pass this tonight. So I won't bore council and go through the entire thing. The bylaw, the draft bylaw is attached to the report. The highlighted changes are the changes. The highlighted in yellow are the changes to the previous bylaw. The previous bylaw, I believe, was passed in 2008. So this one will update it and actually hand off authority from council to the public works manager in the primary position, with the chief building official, the secondary position.
Okay.
Any questions?
Councillor Regan.
So, thank you, Madam Mayor. So I'm just trying to refresh my memory. So the last time we talked about this, we talked about this being taken out of the hands of council. And I think I asked that question. So I'm still not comfortable with just not being able to have a say with that. So sorry. I only have Stephen's number because I'm the teacher, but I don't have Doug's number. So yes, so I'm just, again, can you help me
Yeah,
with that?
I understand, but there's nothing that we can do. It's not council may, it's council shall. So we are required to do that. And in all honesty, most, 99 out of 100 site plans really are technical in nature. So it's the chief building official, it's the planner, it's the public works officials that really delve into it. What I do want to do on a go forward basis is for staff to, once a month report on any approvals in the form of a report to council, just so council can keep abreast of what's being approved. I mean, we need to keep the members of council informed as to what's happening out there, and we will certainly do that.
So it certainly has nothing to do with the skills and abilities of staff, absolutely not. That's not what, Mike, I'm just wondering, is there going to be a regular, and again, I just want to make sure I understand this, is there a regular sort of reporting program, report back to council that we're going to be able to see? Because I'm going to get questions.
Yep.
Councilors are going to get questions about things. And so I'm just concerned about that is all. Thank
So,
you.
through you, Madam Mayor, to Councillor Regan. The intent is that once a month, a report will come to council. Just one of the meetings, not every meeting, but once a month. I think, and there's going to be some months where there obviously isn't, because we don't have that many site plans in a year. We do have a few in before us, in this last number of months, but that's a bit of an unusual scenario. But yeah, we will get them to you in a timely manner.
Thank you, Ron. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
All right. Any other comments or questions from council? Councillor Hodgins.
Just a quick comment that there was a resolution passed with the East Gwillimbury related to this, where I guess they're sharing some of the concerns that we voiced at our last council meeting. So if it's something we want to consider potentially supporting that motion or resolution of that council, just a comment for now. Thanks.
Through you, Madam Mayor, back to Councillor Hodgins. I think that's the intent of our delegation request to the AMO through the AMO event. I think we want to express those concerns, and that this is, while the intent might be great, the delivery and the details are certainly not going to bear that out, or at least we don't feel they're going to bear that out. So again, with the county being the primary provider of planning services, we're kind of focusing our delegation through the county.
Any other questions? Okay. With that, the motion in front of us is that report CAO-10-2022 regarding delegation of site plan appointment Bill 109, More Homes for Everyone Act be received. I think there's two plans in there. And further, that a new site plan control bylaw be enacted to add delegation of authority for site plan control to the public works manager and the chief building official. Before I ask for a mover and a seconder, Jeff, are you up for the the challenge? Because once it's moved and seconded and approved, there's no backing out. You're on the hill of the roller coaster. Okay, with that in mind, can I get a mover and a seconder, please? Councillor Hodgins and Councillor Regan. All in favor? And that is carried. Okay. Thank you, Jeff.
Okay, thank you, Madam Mayor. The second report before council tonight is in regards to the disconnecting from work policy. And again, this is in regards to Bill 27, which is entitled the Working for Workers Act 2021. It was passed by the province on December 2nd, 2021. It effectively amends the Ontario Employment Standards Act. This new legislation established a requirement that employers of 25 or more employees introduce a quote right to disconnect policy. So Lucan Biddulph obviously is committed to supporting the overall health and wellness of our employees and providing employees with work-life balance. The proposed policy has been established in compliance with Bill 27 to support employee health and wellness, minimize excessive sources of stress related to work or workload, and to ensure that employees have the ability to disconnect from their work outside of their normal work hours. Bill 27 includes a requirement that a copy of the written policy be supplied to its employees within 30 calendar days of the policy being prepared. The requirement's also in place should the policy ever be changed or amended. New employees will be provided with a copy of this policy during orientation and onboarding. There is no impact to the physical budget. And obviously on this strategic plan, this matter supports the following strategic directions, goals and actions. It's goal number 3 being a premier employer, and action number 4 is actively instill a positive workplace environment and culture at the township and pride in the community. So attached to the report is the draft policy, and it more or less mirrors and many thanks to the deputy clerk. She worked on this one for us. It mirrors our surrounding neighbors, which is Middlesex Center and actually the county of Middlesex as well.
Great, thanks, Ron. Questions or comment on this policy? Yep, Councillor Regan.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. So it's for 25 or more, right? So we don't have that. So once again, we're being progressive and ahead of the curve. Thank you.
Absolutely. That's a rhetorical question.
Right, any comments? I'll make the same comment that we started when we had this discussion, probably 2 council meetings ago. I think it's a sad state that we have to have this sort of policy, that people don't feel comfortable disconnecting from work, but unfortunately, our phones have created an environment, not just for here, but for everybody in general. So with that, the motion in front of us is that report CAO-11-2022 regarding a disconnecting from work policy be received, and further that council adopt policy number 101-21-2022, disconnecting from work policy. And a mover and a seconder for that, please. Councillor Westman and Councillor Hodgins, all in favor? And that is carried. Did you have anything verbal?
That's all, Madam Mayor.
Okay, but you don't need to turn that off just yet, because we're going to talk, while we don't have any building or bylaw, I know that you did want to touch on a subject.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. The staff, the front office staff seem to, I don't know what it is with cats these days, but they're on the prowl. I think maybe the warmer weather will slow things down a bit, but we seem to be getting an inordinate number of complaints about roaming cats at night. It's causing all kinds of problems. We've talked about trying to trap the cats, but in discussions with our animal control officer, those traps have to be checked every 2 hours, and especially on a day like today, 2 hours is probably going to be too long. So there's liability issues, there's problems. There's no easy answers to these complaints. And I guess the point of bringing it up tonight is to try to appeal to the public to be a responsible pet owner and keep your cat under control and in your own property, in your own house or unit. That's our hope. It is costing us time. It's costing us money to look after this problem. And, hopefully everybody can be, like I said, a responsible pet owner and keep their cat under control.
Thank you for that. Tina, did you have anything from your office?
Thank you. Through you, Madam Mayor. Just a little update, because I did attend the AMCTO conference recently, and one, it was nice to be back in person. 2, I found the workshops that I had picked to be very useful. There was a lot that were in preparation for our new term of council, and I did attend some sessions on procedural bylaws, and it was useful, as we are going to be looking at that and updating and just cleaning that up a little bit. I attended a session on citizen advisory committees, which was interesting, and they provided many examples of how some municipalities handle them and differences between staff working groups and task force and advisory committees, and the importance of terms of reference and code of conducts for committees. So we're going to be looking at making sure we have all of that kind of in line for our new term of council. One of the workshops I did attend it was really good. The presenter was the clerk from Thunder Bay, and it was called Clerk's Rule. And it was about bringing laughter and joy into the office and how they managed through the pandemic. And I enjoyed it because she kept it entertaining. But it was also, I felt like I could relate, because we have that type of environment here. We do have a very fun group to work with. A lot of the things they do that she suggested, she showed a slide of staff dressing up as each other. And I thought, if I could only show them John Riddle dressed up as myself for Halloween, that, I maybe one up them on that, but it was it was good. It was entertaining and she made some good points and it just made me appreciate that we do have such a good environment here with our staff and that we do bring a lot of joy to work because that's important. Makes coming to work easier. And yeah, I found all the workshops good and hopefully some of the information that I retained will be able to be useful in some of the updates we're looking at. So thank you.
Awesome. That's great, Tina. I'm glad that you were able to do it in person. That's good. Yeah. Okay, moving on. Finance, Catherine.
I just wanted to mention that we're gearing up again for another budget season already. So last year was our first year where we did the budget survey out to the public. So we like to do that again this year. So at this time, I'm just, if council has any questions or anything they'd like to see included on that or information I'd like to gather, just to let me know. We hope to get it out in July sometime, so it can run for about a month or so we can have the information back and start to analyze it as we get ready for putting the numbers together in the fall.
Thank you for that. How is, I guess maybe the question is, how will the budget with the election at the end of October, how will that impact the budget's timeline? Have you thought about that?
Yes, I have. And we will still continue to do the same work internally as staff. And then with the new term of council, it'll probably start a bit later than what we're used to, just once that new term is, the new council is initiated sometime in November. So it might put it off by a month than our normal schedule, but hopefully we can still keep up and sort of maintain what we established in this past budget cycle.
Okay, thank you for that. And I think that the results from the budget survey are on the website, like from the last one, if council wanted to look at it to review what it looked like last year. That might give you an idea, right?
Yes, that's
Okay.
there.
Okay, thank you, Catherine. Okay, planning, Dan.
Through the chair, thanks, Madam Mayor and members of council. So you may have passed your delegation authority, but you haven't passed the bylaw yet. So you get to hear 2 more site plan applications before that formally occurs. So I do have 2 site plan applications here for you tonight. The first being SPA for 2020, which is the application number, and that is for 1000 Heenan Court. And that's with Kyle Landon and Landon Landscaping. So this particular site is on the east side of Heenan Court, on the northwest corner of the intersection at Heenan and Fallon Drive, in the township's industrial park. And I believe it's the last remaining lot there to be developed. The lands are designated industrial in the official plan, and they are zoned general industrial M1. Which does generally provide or permit a wide range of various industrial uses. So in this particular case, the owner is proposing to construct a contractor's yard or shop in the format of his landscaping business on the property. And there is a site plan which is attached to the report, which shows the proposed layout with the building on the corner, and storage containers located towards the rear of the site. It also does include attractive landscaping along the frontage. Also of note to council, there are paved access points, paved parking areas. Grading's been considered, as well as servicing and stormwater management. And there is also an elevation plan of the building as well as landscaping as noted. And I would just also state that they will be required to submit for building permit, which I believe they've already done so concurrently, as they are under a tight deadline to begin construction on this particular project. So with that said, in general, it does conform or is consistent with the PPS as well as the county, local as official plans in the zoning bylaw. And as such, we are recommending site plan approval for this particular site. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much for that. Comments on this site plan in front of us? Nothing. Okay, then the motion in front of us is that the site plan approval be granted for the lands owned by Kyle Landon of Landon Landscaping located at 1000 Heenan Court in Lucan. A mover and a seconder for that, please. Councillor Regan and Councillor Westman, all in favor? And that's carried. Okay, the second one, Dan?
Through the chair, thanks, Madam Mayor. So the second property is SPA 5/2020. So this is an application we did receive back in 2020, and we've worked with the applicant and owner in this case since then. You may remember that this site was subject to a former zoning bylaw amendment, and it's located on the north side of Richmond Street, east of the intersection at Highway 4 and County Road 47 or Saintsbury. And it's the last remaining multifamily development site in the Old Clover subdivision. It's a 2.66 acre parcel, and it's accessed by Old Clover Drive on the west side. And it's kind of located behind the single detached dwellings that are being built on the west side of Old Clover Drive, just inside the intersection of Old Clover and Richmond Street. So the surrounding land uses in this case are predominantly all residential in the format of single detached dwellings. The property is currently vacant and is entirely within the urban settlement area of Lucan. It's designated residential and subject to that zoning bylaw amendment, which was settled through the Ontario Land Tribunal. It is zoned a residential third density exception 8 holding zone. Also, it's serviced, and again, access is provided through Old Clover Drive. So in this case, the owner of the property is proposing to construct a 4-story, 57-unit apartment building on the lands. It is located primarily on the southernmost portion of the lands, directly abutting Richmond Street, or Highway 4. And that is consistent with the proposal previously seen by council at the rezoning process and through the Ontario Land Tribunal appeal process as well. The overall site plan includes 96 on-site parking spaces, 4 of which are used for barrier-free accessibility. And just as a note to a few particular items in this case, there is an enhanced landscaping scheme across the boundary of the lands, especially backing onto the existing single-family homes. And a barrier-free separated path, a 1.5 meter path, is included from the Old Clover subdivision directly to the building on this lands to provide residents with direct access and walkability within the community. Also, we, in review of the plan, we looked at different items like waste bin collections, access grading, drainage, parking, lighting, the exterior facade design of the building. And generally, I would note that all the plans have been signed off by our township engineering review, as well as the county engineering staff. And they will be further subject to a permit from the Ministry of Transportation, given their proximity to Richmond Street. So in all, the subject proposal is consistent with the PPS, as well. It does conform to the County of Middlesex official plan and Lucan Biddulph's official plan. And it does conform to Lucan Biddulph's comprehensive zoning bylaw. I would note there is a holding zone on the particular property, so they will come back to remove that holding zone prior to issuance of the building permit. And that's where they'll do the Ministry of Transportation approval at that time as well. So with that said, I am recommending approval for the site plan application for Cloverfield Apartments, care of Brock Developments, which is located at 33318 Richmond Street in Lucan. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Dan, for that. Questions on this site plan? Councillor Regan.
Thank you very much, Madam Mayor. So Dan, so I'm looking at attachment 1, just the, sorry, put the glasses back on so I can see it. So I'm looking at the back of the property, so I guess the northwest part of it. So where it says potential snow, I don't know if you can see the same one. And I'm just concerned that I don't see the landscaping plan. I know around the other areas around like Old Clover and like at the front of the building, it says outdoor amenity space, but I thought there was supposed to be something right at the back of the building. And then so I'm just going to carry on with my questions. The other one is that I see they're putting another wood fence in. As I drive by there are several families that already have wooden fences in already. So I don't know if it's going to be different or if they have to negotiate that with the homeowners. And the third question is, I always thought there was an entrance off of Richmond Street, unless I'm just not seeing it. To get to this, they have to come in off of Old Clover, right, I think? All right, so anyway.
Yep, through the chair to Councilor Reagan. So I'll address your last one first. The province through MTO will not permit direct access off of Richmond Street. So access has to come from the local road, in this case being Old Clover Drive in the Old Clover subdivision. In terms of landscaping, I do apologize. I see that the landscaping plan is not attached to the report here tonight. However, I can provide that to council if they so choose, but there is basically landscaping or trees that are provided along that 3-meter buffer all the way across the backs of those fences, actually all across the site, so surrounding the entirety. And I also would note that in terms of fencing, there's provisions in the site plan agreement that require the fencing to be in place, but we're not requiring them to replace existing fencing that's already there. So it would be up to the existing landowners there if they want to remove and replace it with one consistent fence. But typically those fences are already there, so we would just ask that they remain and connect to one comprehensive fencing design for the site. So, and I believe through Public Works, they actually have a policy that you can't butt fences up against each other. Right. So that's not something that we would want to see. It would just be one comprehensive fence around the site.
Right, okay. Okay, thank you, Madam Mayor. Thanks, Dan.
Okay, any other questions or Councillor Hodgins?
Thank you. Pretty first comment. I guess it's pretty exciting to see this come through. I know there's been some talk about that vacant property and its maintenance. So it's great, and also great to see this type of development that it's it's probably some of the highest density we've seen in our township. So pretty exciting. With it being apartment units, through the chair, do we know if these are rental units or whether they're for sale?
So through the chair, I'm not 100% certain, but typically what I would say is the developer's model in other municipalities is to sell units. So I would suspect that would be the case in this particular instance.
Okay, but we don't know for sure. Okay, I was thinking rental units would be great to have some of that in our community, but we don't get to decide that, I think. Just looking at the attachment 1 site plan in a bit more detail, is the site enclosed with fencing, or is there an opening to the highway?
So through the chair to Councillor Hodgins, that is something that we've gone back and forth with the developer about. So the original subdivision agreement required fencing along that stretch of lands along Richmond Street. We would prefer that there's not fencing in place. So through the subdivision agreement, through the site plan agreement, fencing is not contemplated along Richmond Street to provide that interface with the existing Richmond Street. And then potential future sidewalk expansion within the area to allow for direct access onto the property. However, we'll wait and see what MTO does and as part of their permit process. We would encourage them not to include fencing along there. However, again, that's subject to provincial requirements.
Okay, thank you. I guess just to ask a bit more about that future sidewalk. I think it is just like a rural cross section here with some ditching, so that we don't have the sidewalks there now. Is there any requirement through the site plan or site plan agreement that the developer would be responsible for some of those costs for the sidewalk? If not, is that us? Is it the highway or the county or the province?
So through the chair, yes, there is. I'm just looking at the agreement right now. It's section 31 payment in lieu of sidewalks. So the developer has agreed to provide a sum of $15,000 in payment in lieu of sidewalks along that portion of Richmond Street, which is their frontage. And that 15,000 was the sum provided by our public works staff to determine what that value would be at our cost of placing sidewalk within that area. So yes, they have provided funding for that.
Okay, that's fantastic, because I would assume that many people residing here would go for that much simpler connection, to Tim Hortons or to Clark's. Just again, looking at the site plan itself, I'm looking at the sidewalk connection that goes out to Old Clover Drive. There appears to be just the one sidewalk on the far side of Old Clover Drive, and I'm wondering how that's going to connect. It just seems like it sort of terminates there on the curb radius with a ramp. So it just doesn't appear to be a very, I don't know, safe or accommodating connection to get from this site to the public sidewalk. Is there any consideration for a pedestrian crossing signage there, or anything else that can be done to make that more accessible?
Yeah, if I may, Madam Mayor. So at this point, the sidewalk is on the other side of Old Clover. So the choice will either cross the road or go to the corner of Old Clover and Spencer Drive, because it is, the sidewalk is on Spencer Drive on the same side of the road as basically this development. I think once we realize what kind of pedestrian traffic we're going to be dealing with, we can decide whether we need if we do need a crosswalk, or if we need an extension of the sidewalk down Old Clover to connect up with the corner of Spencer. There's a one lot there that we do, there is a side yard, or it is a side yard. So we do have boulevard that would easily be able to extend the sidewalk to the corner of Spencer and Old Clover. But until we get to the idea of what kind of traffic we're dealing with there, we haven't gone to that point. So.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, I would encourage, getting as much pedestrian connections as possible and getting a walkable and safe community area. So that's all my questions, but yeah, very exciting to see this. Thank you.
Okay, thank you for that. Any other comments or questions on this application or this, application in front of us? Okay, so the motion in front of us is that the site plan approval be granted for the lands owned by Cloverfield Apartments, Inc., care of Brock Developments, located at 33318 Richmond Street, Lucan. A mover and a seconder for that, please. Councillor Hodgins and Councillor Westman. All in favor? And that is carried. Okay, thank you, Dan. And yes, our last site plans that we've approved. So, did you have it? Do you have anything verbal to share or anything? Okay, Public Works, Jeff.
Good evening, Madam Mayor. I have two reports and a couple of verbal updates. My first report is the site alteration report, and this one was brought forward by Councillor Westman a little while ago. And I'll be honest, when he first brought it up, it was an interesting topic because I knew about it, and I know it's something that has become more of an issue lately. So as I did this report and started pulling information, it really kind of opened my eyes to a lot of different aspects that this report touches on. So the report basically is a recommendation that council does bring forward a bylaw. The purpose of this report, though, is to give council the information to make that decision. An alteration, site alteration, basically is any landowner that wants to remove or add soil on their property and change the natural drainage of their property. Currently, there's no process for evaluation or approval of land alterations in the township unless it's part of a proposed development, a municipal drain, or a site plan application. And because of this, it's a bit of a challenge to monitor, prevent, and mitigate any problems that do arise when a landowner does decide to change their property. Conservation authorities have been a little more attuned to this, and because once these changes are done, it affects the drainage, which is can affect a lot of the regulated areas that the conservation authorities look after. One of the ways that this has always been corrected in the past has been through basically comes down to litigation, property owner versus property owner. And it becomes, as we go along, as a large landowner versus a small landowner, it becomes David versus Goliath in a lot of instances. So in looking at this, I listed some of the benefits, and I listed some of the maybe the negative, perceived negatives of bringing this bylaw into place. So just touch on a couple of the benefits. It does, will have a reduction of the potential negative impacts to adjacent properties that when a landowner does change their grade. And also too, I wanted to point out to council that one of the other aspects of this bylaw would be the township can issue permits. And this allows the township or a municipality the flexibility to work with properties or developments that may need to do site work prior to completion of their approvals. And it allows projects to get up and going. And I've talked to a lot of municipalities, and that's one of the benefits that they've seen through this sort of bylaw. On the negative side, I did list some of the negatives that might be perceived. One of the things I did want to point out is in discussions with Middlesex Center, who brought this bylaw in, they did say that be aware that is additional work. It is not an easy bylaw or permit system. It doesn't just run itself. You do have to do your homework, and you have to do your checking on things. And then of course, if there's any sort of problems, it could be complicated following up on some of that. So I just want to make sure council was aware of that. I am recommending this bylaw. I believe as a municipality grows, our farming industry is getting bigger, our industries and our businesses are getting bigger. It's becoming more important to make sure that our land transforms appropriately. And that's what this bylaw is meant to do. And as I've touched on before, conservation authorities do support this type of bylaw. It makes their job a little bit easier because we're working with them and supporting them in that. And like I said, there has been a number of neighboring municipalities that have already implemented this bylaw. And I would point out that I did attach an example of a bylaw, and it basically would be very similar to Middlesex Center and Strathroy Caradocs, very much so. I'd like to, before we go on to a couple more of the details, I'd just like to point out, though, there is in a number of important exemptions, such as if you did take out a building permit, the building permit will allow you to make changes to your property under the building permit. Normal farming activities. This isn't meant to handicap farmers that are doing their regular work. Residential landscaping obviously doesn't fall under it. And then obviously conditions of site plan or development agreements. And then finally, any activities done by the municipality, county, or the road authority doesn't fall under this bylaw. And as in the report, I do recognize that there is a difference between large and small scale alterations. And I do recommend that we do issue permits, but I think we have to recognize that, there is a difference there. So I am recommending that we use, anything under 50 cubic meters, that there's no fee or no security involved. And I think that's quite obvious that if somebody added that much material, it's really not going to make the overall change in the property devastating to their neighbors or have that kind of effect. I am recommending that between 50 cubic meters and up to 500 cubic meters, that there is a $500 fee and a $2,500 security put in place to follow up, and keep track, or to investigate if there is any problems further down the road. And then finally, the big one, anything over 500 cubic meters, $500 fee and a $10,000 security. As well, when you do alterations that are talking about moving or adding 500 cubic meters of soil, I am recommending that we require engineered stamped grading plan as part of the application process. And again, these are very similar aspects to what's in other municipalities and neighboring municipalities. Fines can be, the minimum is $500 up to a maximum of $10,000 per day. And that I'd also like to point out in the bylaw that there is the ability for the township to issue a work order, which basically can have the contravention corrected at the cost of the landowner. And that's key, I think, in a lot of cases, that it's not so much about the fine, it's about getting the problem corrected there. So impact of budget, there's really not an impact of budget per se, in that there's going to be extra money have to be put aside, other than the extra staff time towards it. There will be fees to cover any additional work that does have to take place. And I'll leave it at that and open it to questions.
Okay, thank you very much for that, Jeff. There's a lot in this, and appreciate all the background that you put into it. Questions or comments from council? Councillor Westman.
Yeah, I just want to start off by saying thank you. I know this was a very arduous task to get this put together, and really appreciate the effort. From the conservation authorities, Jeff's right. This is a huge tool to have in the toolbox to deal with issues. I mean, throughout the watersheds of both the conservation authorities that we are members of, we've had issues with site alterations that were significantly bigger than just a few yards of dirt. From the Conservation Authority, we're obviously concerned about protected wetlands and hazard lands and things like that, water courses that may be affected by filling in with land. And this, I'll say, this was prompted not only by our issues that we've had here in Lucan Biddulph, we have had some, but from around the community and the member municipalities that are in the Conservation Authority, and one that I serve as a representative on the Upper Thames. It was prompted by a very serious issue there. So this, I hope, will provide us with at least the tools to be able to do things right moving forward. And I don't think it'll be a huge imposition for landowners. I think it'll be something that we can work with them and be able to manage it very well. So again, I'd like to thank Jeff and his team for, that's a lot of work, and to get us where we are here. So thanks.
Okay, thanks, Alex. Any other comments or questions or clarification from Jeff's report? Councillor Hodgins.
Thanks. I just want to echo Councillor Westman's comments, and as well, I'd like to commend staff for the thorough report. It's very clear. It's laid out, and the also putting together the bylaw so quickly. Just want to say thank you for that.
Anything else? No. Jeff, I was just wondering a couple things, what the next steps are. If there is going to be, if you're planning on circulating it before we actually pass the bylaw, if there's going to be any sort of public notification. Because as much as I agree, I don't think that this will have a large effect on our residents. I do think it will stimulate some questions and conversation. I think that there's probably some out there that think that there will be an impact to them. So I just wondered if you're going to circulate it in any way prior to us passing it, or what the plan was there.
Yeah, Madam Mayor, and I do, when I first started this, I did have the same concerns because, and I believe in first of all, the bylaw that has been attached is basically a draft example, and it certainly is meant to stimulate comment. So I would definitely recommend that we, once we go past this meeting, that we do put it out into the public and request some comment back here, because we do know we have a number of farmers that are not, they want to make their land better. And we certainly don't want to hinder them. We want to make sure that they can do their process as well, as long as it doesn't affect their neighboring properties. So no, I haven't got to that point. I don't really know the advertising campaign, but I think it's a must that we do get it out and ask for comment back.
Okay, appreciate that. So we can trust that internally something will be devised as to how we get it out and circulated. Okay, and then I just wondered on with the levying of fines, does it have to go through the approval process through the province, or how does that work?
Through you, Madam Mayor, yes, it does. It'll be sent off to the ministry for draft approval. And then it will come back to council for reading and unless Jeff does the public distribution process first. But yeah, it usually takes about 3 to 4 weeks for ministry approval.
Thank you. And I know that I think this was asked and answered at one of the previous meeting, but our neighbors all have headed in this direction. I think you did poll our neighboring municipalities, and for the most part, they all have one or are working towards one, correct?
Yeah, that's correct, Madam Mayor. I know for sure Middlesex Center has had it for a while and have been using it. I think Strathroy-Caradoc was fairly new at it, and Thames Center is in the process of just finalizing theirs. So,
all right, thank you for that. If there isn't any further discussion, then the motion in front of us is that report number PW-14-2022 be received for information, and that council directs staff to prepare a bylaw to regulate the placing, removing or altering of soil to change the grade of land in the township. And a mover and a seconder for that, please. Councillor Westman and Councillor Regan, all in favor, and that's carried. Okay, do you want to continue on, Jeff?
my second report is a little bit shorter. It's a report on Kent Street, and we have had basically there's a section of Kent Street, and it has basically failed. It has been on our radar for the last year or so, but over the last winter, we've seen the pavement really let go, and we're constantly out there patching it. So it's a section on Kent Street between, and I call it a section because I would, patching a small section and not correcting the whole problem, to me, doesn't make a lot of sense in this case. So I'm proposing a section between the intersection of Beach Street and going up to where Kent Street turns into Walnut at the curve there. And it's pretty obvious. Kent Street, it was an existing street. and had the existing pavement in, and then Walnut was extended. And a lot of the heavy traffic, there has been a lot of heavy traffic go down this little section of road over the last decade, as well as a number of houses built in the area as well in that section. So it has taken a pounding, but I guess what it comes down to is normally it would be on our budget. It would be a line item in our budget, which it can be, which is an option for council to put it off till next year. But I'm recommending to council to move it forward and approve staff to move forward with it. This year, it will come out of the same, basically the same reserve, whether it's this year or next year. It's going to come out of the capital construction or the road construction capital reserve. And so it's not like it is, the money's there and we would access the same thing. Just before I go further, I just make sure that we're aware that I did go over the section with a paving contractor, and his estimate, a very loose estimate at the walkthrough, not a quote by any means, was around $60,000. And as the township has done in the past, we usually do a base, take out the old stuff, do the base work, and put a base coat in, and then a top coat the year after. And that would be a $40,000 budget item this year, with a $20,000 next year, based on the estimate. So yeah, so I'll leave it at that.
Okay, thank you for that, Jeff. Comment on this report, Councillor Regan.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. So Jeff, this would have to go out like to tender, right, to have this done? Or did you, when you said you had a contractor, that's?
No, through the mayor, yeah, no, this would be a formal, yeah, we would still have to go out and get formal quotations. Yeah, the hope there would be that 60,000 would be less, and that through a formal request for quotation, we get a more precise amount.
So if I may, so this will be done. So if we do this, we approve this, this will be done right away. We'll get this right out and get this done before, of course, before the winter. That's what the idea is. Yeah.
Yeah, and through the mayor, yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
I think the concern here is to talk with the outside staff. They're a little concerned that we could have issues if this stays this way through the winter with the snow plowing.
Okay. And there's one, just because I'm just curious, when you say a road has failed, like I'm sure that's a technical term somehow, what does that mean?
Yeah.
Like when you say failed, should we drive on it? Should it
No,
be like, because if you tell me a bridge has failed,
No.
like that.
No, Madam Mayor, I should be a little more precise. It's the pavement. The structure of the pavement has failed. The road itself is still safe. The base underneath it will be fine. It's in the picture you can see, and they call it a real technical term of alligator cracking. And it basically the pavement has lost its structure and is disintegrating on us. So.
All right. So I asked that because when you use the word fail, I know I'm going to get a phone call. So thank you. Thank you. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Okay, any other questions on that? Okay, so the motion in front of us is that report number PW-15-2022 be received for information and that council approves the repaving of a section of road on Kent Street. A mover and a seconder, please. Councillor Regan and Councillor Hodgins, all in favor? And that is carried. Did you have anything verbal, Jeff?
I have a couple of, and I'll try to keep it quick here. Just to follow up to the last council meeting, we do have a legal agreement developed for Matt Long of the Donnelly Cafe. So I'm hoping to get that. Well, I will get that to him hopefully, before the end of the week. Unfortunately, the county, there was between holidays and staffing, the county has not been able to do sightline an investigation yet, but I have been in contact with Chris and he said he does want to do one for sure at that location. So I'll follow up with the county on that. So I just want to make sure council is aware that we are trying to get that going as much as we can along those lines. A couple things, funny, was going to bring up, and Alex kind of stole all our thunder. Maybe I'm stealing Paul's thunder. We did meet with Sabo Field, not Sabo Fields. We met with the ABCA out at their lid that they're doing or that we're doing at the corner of the park there. The subdivider, Asabo Fields, is building it, and it's basically almost complete. And then once they're completed, we're going to end up doing our plantings and actually bring in we've got design on a pollinator gardens. We're going to turn back a portion of the path back to a more natural walkway with some trees and natural plantings. And as well, we're looking at a rain garden that'll be around the community gardens area. So that'll provide flowers and area down in that section. So I think I was real happy with our meeting today. I think it's going to be a real interesting point there. And it just happens that everything in that little area works out for that. It's a low spot in the park. And I think it's going to be a real nice when it's done. It'll take a year or two for the plantings to grow out, but I am really excited about that. The other update, and again, I don't mean to steal Paul's thunder. I'm talking before him. The soccer fields are flying right along. I was, but Paul, I won't talk about the soccer fields. But the road and the infrastructure that has to go in should be almost complete by the end of this week. So that's really good news, but I won't talk about the soccer fields. On a side note, we have finished traffic counts on all our roads. So if anybody wanted a count on any of our roads, I'm not so much in town, but our exterior road or our rural roads, please just let us know. Julie has them. We have an Excel sheet, and that'll be something we do every year, so we can see rise and falls and traffic patterns. So it's available if anybody wants one. And then the other thing is the speed signs are out. We're going to be moving them around. If anybody has any locations, I know Clandy Boys requested them. We'll do Saintsbury, we'll do Nicoline, the traditional ones, but please, if there's a street out there that we want to do, just let us know. Okay.
Excellent. Well, thank you very much for all of that, Jeff. That was great. Good. So now we'll move on to Parks and Recreation. Do you have anything, Paul?
Well, thank you to you, Madam Mayor. I don't have any formal reports tonight. I had some verbal reports, but no, in all seriousness, the lid project, as Jeff said, it's looking very positive how it's going to move forward. Our staff will be probably out there doing weed control and getting the area prepped throughout the month of July and getting ready for planting in August. One thing to note, just because I know in the future, as we are investing in this with how we're doing this, there's going to be some times where we have to cut down what we're planting, and it's part of the development of the gardens. And this is something that's recommended by the ABCA that was mentioned to us today. So we're going to bring forward a report to council about the actual maintenance of this lid once the project's complete. Just because residents will have questions, they'll say, why did you plant that? And then you're cutting it down. So, because I had that red flag as soon as it was mentioned, and because that's going to come up. So just to make council aware of that in the future, that will be coming forward, because that will be a question in the community. Beyond that, the soccer fields are going quite well. We did, during the heavy winds last week, we had a few complaints about dust. Unfortunately, it's out of our control. But with some of the rain we've had, we're hoping that's helped keep that down. On top of this, the reforestation project as well that we had done back in 2021 in spring, the 5 acres behind the sewage treatment plant. It's noted that there's been 98% survival rate of the trees planted and quite good growth. And being a farmer's field, I'm hoping that that's probably why lots of good nutrients in there. So as we do have all these good projects on the go, a lot of them have made good progress. I'm thinking of opening it to council if anyone wants to join myself at some of these sites to do some walkthroughs. The community center itself is another good site, just because as things are developing, they're progressing. There's going to be questions of the community for council and how things are developing, and sometimes a picture is more than words. So if you would like to come see it, please reach out to me. I'm going to try and orchestrate something in the next couple of weeks where we can get out to these sites and show you what's being accomplished. Beyond that, through you, Madam Mayor, just to keep council aware, the tender for multipurpose courts, as I mentioned earlier, is closing the 30th of this month at 1 p.m. And the supervisor position has been posted and is due to close on July 22nd.
Okay, thank you very much for that update, Paul. Economic development.
No update at this time, thanks.
Thank you, Lisa. On to councillor comments. Daniel?
Sorry, thank you, Madam Mayor. Sorry, I just wanted to ask a question if Jeff, sorry, Jeff, I usually give you a heads up. The slowdown signs, I know there's a plan. We have a plan for speed control, traffic control in Lucan Biddulph, and the slowdown signs that we started last year. I'm just wondering if we had reordered them. I have only had a couple of requests. I see a number of them in the community. I'm just wondering if we're going to ramp that back up, if that was a plan, and can people who want new signs get in touch with you or Julie?
Yeah, and through the mayor, to be honest, we haven't repurchased any of the signs. We can. The designs are as it's simple, just a reorder. To be honest, I wasn't sure if we had enough demand for it. But I will, that'd be something maybe I could talk to Julie. She's more in tune if we've had those requests than I am. And again, I would probably look for council if, for a direction, if that's a program we do want to keep moving forward.
May I follow up, Madam Mayor? I'm just wondering, maybe just to council or just to maybe to Jeff, is should we maybe re-advertise the fact that they're available or could be available just to see if there was an interest? I know, because I know there were people that were involved. Some people took them off their lawns and put them around Elm Street Park. I just don't know if we should give residents the opportunity to maybe re-engage with that. If we do that through our website, and then maybe they can get in touch with you and Julie to see if there is a need. I totally get that. If nobody wants to do it, then that's, I get that. But I'm just wondering, with all our new residents, maybe there are people that want to, again, get involved with that. I'm just asking.
And through the mayor, definitely, I believe it's a good program. And I think we could, through social media, could ask if people are interested in it. I have a concern though, that if we get only a few requests, are we looking like we're not, we're being negative if we don't follow up with it, whether we should go forward with it, they don't go bad, and advertise them, and hopefully there's a demand there. I just wouldn't want to come across negative and not get the signs, but that would be my only concern.
Sorry, I just think it's worth a shot to do it. I really do. It's whatever helps. If it makes one person slow down, then yeah, I'm okay with that.
I guess my comments would be, and I think that the signs are worthwhile, but I know we've also talked about a speed strategy and all of that. And does it make sense to look at it at this point more globally, so to speak? Is it part of something else? Because I think it should be part of something bigger myself. I think the initial program last year was great and it was wonderful, but does it now evolve into maybe more of a strategy for speed and traffic calming and that sort of thing? Where do those signs play a part? Because to be perfectly honest, I don't know, is it appropriate for a resident to just take signs and put them around a park? You know, like, is that, like, I don't know. Yes, it stops traffic, but is that a resident's role, or should that play into the role that the municipality takes on when trying to control speed and traffic across the community? So that would be my 2 cents on that.
And through the mayor, maybe I'll get some more information and see what we're dealing with here, like on costs, demand, whether we've had the contacts at the front desk, and see where we stand with it, to be honest. Yeah.
Do you have anything else?
No, thank you very
Okay.
much.
Any other councillor comments? No. Okay. All right, then there are no changes to budget. Any notices of motion? So we have a motion in front of us for the accounts paid, and that the council of the township of Lucan Biddulph receive the attached accounts as paid for information as follows. And that's for May 2022, $1,301,909.02. A mover and a seconder for that, please. Councillor Hodgins and Councillor Westman. All in favor? And that is carried. We have 4 bylaws in front of us. Bylaw 34-2022 to adopt a site plan control bylaw. Bylaw 35-2022 to authorize the execution of site plan agreement for Kyle Landon. Bylaw 36-2022 to authorize the execution of site plan agreement between Cloverfield Apartments, and bylaw 37-2022 to adopt and confirm all of the actions for tonight's council meeting. So the motion in front of us is that if no one cares to speak to bylaws 34-2022 through 37-2022 inclusive on their first, second, and third reading, that they be considered to have been read a first time and passed, read a second time and passed, and read a third time and passed. A mover and a seconder for that, please. Councillor Westman and Councillor Regan, all in favor? And that's carried. And finally, resolved that I guess before I call that, just a reminder that this is our last meeting in June and that we only have 2 meetings, 1 meeting in July, 1 meeting in August. So our next council meeting is July 12th, is it not? So for those of you that plan your Tuesday night viewing options on YouTube, we will see you on July the 12th. So, and August is a daytime meeting. So just a reminder, and that date is August 9th. So that's and that'll be a 9 a.m. start, I believe. And with that, resolved that the council meeting be adjourned at 8:25 p.m. A mover and a seconder, please. Councillor Regan and Councillor Hodgins. All in favor? And that's carried.